The sun had barely lifted above the skyline when Adrian Hale burst through the sliding glass doors of Mercy Hill Hospital. His pulse hammered in his ears, driven by a heaviness he couldn't quite name. He had no reason to return. He'd left less than an hour earlier, just long enough to shower and pick up a few work files. Yet something pulled him back. A whisper of intuition, a tightness in his chest, a feeling he simply couldn't ignore. As he hurried down the quiet hallway, the rising sun spilled across the polished floor, turning the sterile corridor into a strange mix of calm and dread. Each step echoed with a question he couldn't get rid of. Why am I running? He didn't have an answer. He had a terrifying certainty that whatever was behind the door to room 218 would change everything. And when he pushed that door open, his instincts proved horrifyingly right. Before we continue with this, if you believe in compassion, forgiveness, and the power of second chances, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories. And in the comments below, let us know where in the world are you watching from. Now, back to the story. What Adrian saw inside the room shattered something deep within him. His mother, Eleanor Hale, a delicate, soft-spoken woman in her 70s, who'd always harbored a silent strength about her, now lay helpless in her hospital bed, and leaning over her, gripping a pillow with shaking hands, was his wife, Marissa. The pillow was pressed over Eleanor's face, smothering her fading breaths. Marissa didn't look like herself. The serene, collected woman Adrian married was long gone. In her place stood a woman distorted by a gamut of rage, fear, and desperation that flared furiously in her eyes. For one heartbeat, he couldn't process what he was seeing. Yes, he knew Marissa had been under tremendous stress. Yes, he knew she still harbored resentment against Eleanor over past financial problems. And yes, their marriage had been falling apart for months. But this crossed a line he never imagined she could step over. The pillow fell from Marissa's grasp as Eleanor gasped for air. Adrian sprinted to his mother's side, guiding her breathing, smoothing her hair as tears threatened to blind him. The heart monitor shrieked in panic while sunlight froze mid-beam, casting the room in a surreal suspended glow. Marissa, her eyes wide with fear, seemed to falter backward, unable to defend herself, unable to meet Adrian's horrified stare, as if in that instant, the woman he had married no longer existed, replaced by a stranger whose pain had curdled into something dangerous. But it was only the breaking point in a much longer story. All his life, Adrian had juggled a sense of responsibility with guilt. His mother Eleanor had brought him up alone, working double shifts so he could attend college. She had given up everything, and he carried with him the heavy burden of gratitude impossible to repay. After he married Marissa, he thought life would finally settle, that love would fill those spaces in which hardship once lived. And for a while, it did. Marissa had been warm, graceful, supportive. But when Adrian's business faltered and they were forced to move in with Eleanor, cracks began to appear. Resentment simmered, tempers collided, and unspoken hurts filled the quiet moments between them. Marissa never forgot the humiliation of depending on his mother. Eleanor never forgot the sharp, dismissive comments Marissa whispered behind closed doors. Then, just weeks before the incident, Eleanor collapsed. Heart problems. The doctor said, stress, age, exhaustion. But Adrian sensed it was more than that. His mother's spirit seemed drained, worn down by constant tension in the home. He tried desperately to keep the peace, juggling long hours and emotional fires, but there just simply weren't enough daylight hours to mend what was breaking. And now, as he stood in the hospital room where sunlight warmed the floor but not his heart, Adrian felt the pieces of his world crumble around him. The sudden uproar brought a nurse into the room, quickly followed by hospital security. Marissa was gently escorted out, her face as white as paper, her voice breaking into frantic, trembling apologies. But Adrian wasn't ready, not for explanations, not for excuses, not for anything except making sure his mother could breathe. Slowly, Eleanor's breathing steadied to a fragile rhythm, though her eyes remained clouded with confusion, fear, and a silent ache that pierced Adrian's heart. He took her hand, feeling her thin fingers curl faintly around his own. Emotion swelled in his chest, grief, anger, guilt, and a desperate wish to turn back time. But time doesn't rewind. It only moves forward, demanding decisions you never imagined having to make. When the sun filled the room the next morning, Adrian knew what he had to do. He filed a report, not out of vengefulness, but because the protection of his mother was the one thing which he could never compromise on. In the hours that followed, he sat by Eleanor's side, whispering comfort, and reminding her that she mattered, that she was loved, and that she was not alone. The guilt inside him weighed heavily. He had chosen a partner who allowed bitterness to twist her heart, and he hadn't seen the signs soon enough. But beneath that guilt, a new strength took root. He refused to let pain define their lives anymore. He would not allow resentment to poison the home he wished to rebuild. As Eleanor gained a little more strength, she grasped Adrian's hand and whispered to him that she did not blame him. Her voice came out in a hushed whisper beneath the balmy mid-morning light, but her words were of quiet strength. She told him how love could blind even the kindest of hearts, and unresolved pain turns people into strangers, versions of themselves they no longer recognize. Yet then she looked at him with soft eyes that shook with tears, and reminded him that forgiveness has never called for standing in harm's way. Forgiveness is about freeing oneself from the chains of what broke them. In that moment, Adrian knew healing wasn't only something his mother needed, but also something he needed. Weeks went by. Through counseling, distance, and the advice of lawyers, Adrian began piecing his life together, bit by bit. The daylight inside his house wasn't cold anymore, no longer tinted gray by fear. Eleanor was getting stronger, and Adrian found unexpected peace in caring for this woman who once held the weight of the world for him. Though a part of him did mourn the collapse of his marriage, another part finally breathed. The storm had passed. There was room for hope again. He had learned through experience that sometimes life dragged one through the scariest moments to reveal what was truly important. Love that healed rather than burned, family that lifted rather than drained, and the courage to walk away from anything that endangered your peace. If this story moved your heart, please remember to like, comment, and share, and subscribe to Real Kindness Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive. And before we get to the final message, tell us in the comments, what lesson did you take from Adrian's journey? In the end, Adrian learned that even the deepest heartbreaks can lead to healing when you choose courage over fear, love over bitterness, and hope over despair. His mother took her place once more as a foundation for him, her gentle smile serving as a reminder that even in the most searing moments of daylight, a path forward is always there, so long as you choose to walk it.